Ladies and gentlemen, time for the Mio on MMA podcast, talking about the upcoming UFC card, UFC Paris, coming up on September the 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So a noon card. I'm always here for it, the early cards. Anyways, this is a sneakily good card. I'm just gonna say that right now because despite the fact that there is a lot of debuting fighters on this card, there's Axel Sola, there's Ruchala, there's Kita, there's Delija, I can never say his name right. Delija, there's Harry Hardwick, that's it. Okay, there's 5 debuting fighters, but they are 5 debuting fighters who are actually really, really goddamn good. Like regional champions, really reasons to be excited. They're not Dana White Contender Series guys. They are guys who, I think to a man, okay, Delija is kind of like a weird exception to this because he's 35 years old, or I think 35. I have his age here. Let me just double check that real quick. Yeah, 35. I wouldn't say that he has like a super, super bright future or anything, but like he's pretty much instantly stepping into a situation where he's basically a ranked like heavyweight. It may not last more than a year or two, but he's going to be, I think, a massive part of this division. They all have a lot to offer. We'll go with that. That they will make a mark in the UFC, in my opinion. That's my thought. The only one that maybe I have a slight bit of a concern with is Ruchala. I just don't know. I feel like he's coming in from KSW. He's quite good. He is like an exciting prospect, but I do wonder if maybe there's a couple limitations to his game that will keep him from being a really good fighter. We'll find out given time. And he's got William Gomez in this fight, which is going to possibly answer some of those questions. Anyways, as per usual, we do have to go with the whole MMA betting is a chaotic venture that is not a path to financial freedom. I'm going to be betting on these fights. You are welcome to use the information I provide for betting on these fights. In fact, I do this podcast to kind of, one of the reasons is that talking about it out loud and putting it together and then listening to it back, it does sort of like solidify some of the betting ideas I have. So, obviously it's very, very tied to that, but you shouldn't be putting down money that you cannot afford to lose. This is very much a disposable income, little extra spice of life type deal. That's all it is. That's all it ever should be. And you should have a system that makes sure that it stays that way. There you go. That's my warning. Let's get to the fights here because I'm looking forward to this fight card. At the top of the card, you have Nasruddin Imavov versus Kyle Borralho, possible number 1 contenders fight at middleweight, because there's always the let's say that this one is like quite bad, and then Reiner de Ridder versus Anthony Hernandez is like a really, really fun fight. I think that one would take precedent over it, so I'm not going to call it a number 1 contender fight, but the winner of this fight could very much be getting a title shot after it. Imavov is the plus 100 to plus 115 underdog, minus 125 to minus 138 on Borralho. This is a fascinating fight for unusual reasons, because normally the fascinating fight is like, okay, how are these guys going to match up physically, or maybe even like in a particular technical aspect of the game? And that's not the case here, because if you were to take just the physical skills and the technical skills of Imavov versus Borralho, I don't think it would be actually a particularly interesting fight. What makes this interesting is Borralho's game planning and fight IQ. Because we do not usually see, particularly at middleweight, somebody who actually seems to have a really well-tailored plan to their opponents on a regular basis. Because Borralho's game is a lot of people kind of go with the Machida comparison. I don't really think that that's necessarily accurate, but like he is a good outside striker. He can strike in the good pocket. He's got good cardio. He's got good grappling. He's got good power. He's got wrestling, but it's not overpowering wrestling. It's not something he can always rely upon. And really from a very early point in his career, there's a lot of fights where he actually seems to have like the perfect idea for the opponent that he's facing. And in the UFC, that has also been the case. When he fought Armen Petrosyan, for example, he emphasized the wrestling because Armen Petrosyan is a good range striker and not a lot else. Then when he fights Mikhail Aleksejic, he does the same thing. But when he does a fight with Abus Magomedov, there's not a lot of wrestling that he likes to bring to that table. When he fights a guy like Paul Craig, there's not a lot of wrestling he wants to bring to the table. And then the masterpiece is probably that Jared Cannonier fight, which I would not have recommended, thought of, or considered that someone would try to fight Jared Cannonier the way that Caio Borralho did. And that's where I am fascinated by what he will do in this type of fight with Masudi Imavov. Because Ivanov is a very good fighter if you look at his individual skill sets. He is a good range striker with a jab-heavy game that builds into combinations and has good power. He is actually a really good offensive wrestler. The defensive wrestling, it's a little bit more questionable. There are people who have wrestled him, made things happen against him. There is, I think, there's no amazing performance, but like Phil Haas got him down a couple of times. We also saw the takedowns be a thing from Edmund Shabazian really, really early on, but Shabazian is a really good early fighter. Sean Strickland took him down. Jared Cannonier had a takedown against him. They both fought Jared Cannonier. Brendan Allen was able to get him to the ground as well, so like it's not impossible, but he is a talented grappler for the base striking game that he has. And of course, he is 6'3", which at middleweight is quite large, 75-inch reach. They actually have the same reaches, but the range will be Imavov's friend because he is 2 inches taller. So that's what he's bringing to the table. And I'm assuming that he is going to more or less employ a mix of wrestling and pocket striking and range striking. Kind of doing it all. Try to exploit the range if possible. If it becomes a pocket striking fest, he'll probably go for wrestling. He'll probably look for takedowns. He'll probably look to ground Borralho because he's grounded like people who can grapple probably about the level of Borralho before. He's not afraid of it, and he shouldn't be. Borralho's not some like super dangerous submission grappler. To be honest, I wouldn't even say that. Like, and this is what I mean when I say that the physicality and the technical battle is not necessarily the interesting part here, because I don't really think of Borralho as a super dangerous anything. It's just he has worked out what it is that he needs to do to get the win. And there's also another big problem here, and that is that Imavov is fighting against a southpaw. That's always historically a problem when you're fighting guys who are jab heavy. We've kind of said this before, that there's a number of times where like a jab heavy fighter is someone you have to worry about facing a southpaw. I didn't do this beforehand. Is there a southpaw that he fought and he proved that he could jab? I'm not seeing one. I'm going through his UFC record because obviously we're not going to find the regional answer. I'd have to go back and watch those fights live, and that's obviously not necessarily going to give us the right answer. Well, in a time appropriate manner. Okay, Joaquin Buckley is apparently a southpaw. Okay, that fight was not necessarily a good striking performance by by Imavov. Fairly low output. That's not helping me. That's not. It's not leading me to good things. We'll put it that way. So that's not a great sign. And then Jordan Williams doesn't really count because, I mean, for one thing, he kind of just crushed him. Again, also not the highest output fight in the world, and one where he kind of willingly went to the clinch and went to the wrestling pretty early. So actually, that would be a bad sign. So I don't know. We'll put it that way. I don't know how well he understands how to jab against a southpaw. And Borralho is a southpaw. Is a guy who does control range reasonably well, has defensive ideas, has different looks he can give him, and that's just kind of adding to it. So, like, You're getting me live convincing myself more of the pick that I was already going to make here. I'm going with Kyle Borralho. And I know he's been getting a lot of crap lately, and I kind of get it because I'm not. It's kind of weird because like I'm a fan of Borralho's ability to game plan and the interesting notes that he puts into that because obviously, how do I put this? Obviously, I enjoy a technical fighter, obviously, but at the same time, the fighting nerd thing is very, very lame. I guess that's the simplest point. The whole gimmick of the fighting nerds is kind of lame because I don't believe that you're nerds. Put it that way. But if there is one that is, it probably is Kyle Borralho. So there you go. So I'm gonna go Kyle Borralho to unlock the various ideas present. Yes, Imavov has achieved more on paper. He beat Israel Adesanya, which is a big deal, but he was losing that fight up until he knocked him out. And he beat Brendan Allen, which is a big deal. He finished Jared Cannonier, where Borralho could not. And despite it being a majority decision, it was like a dominant display against Roma Dolidze. But if I was to say which of those fighters resembles Borralho, the answer is none of them. So I am going with Borralho by decision. I also didn't really get into Imavov also tends to fade in fights because he has cardio issues. So there is that on top of that. Benoit Saint-Denis versus Mauricio Hufi. Hufi is the minus 175 to minus 205 favorite. Saint-Denis is the plus 145 to plus 163 favorite. The only question here is really just physicality. Benoit Saint-Denis brings a level of physicality that we have not seen Hufi fight at all. Because his biggest physical challenge in the UFC thus far has been King Green. And in 2025, he is not close. The other fights are against Lontop and Jamie McClarkey, notably not athletic guys. His Brazilian regional scene is actually pretty solid, but there's no one that brings the level of physicality that we see pretty routinely from Benoit Saint-Denis. So that is the question. Can Hufi knock out Saint-Denis? Absolutely. Saint-Denis is a guy who's going to walk into hard shots. He has no concept of defense. So if the physicality does not shock him, does not present a problem, does not instantly bring results for Saint-Denis with his bullying wrestling game, Hufi will win, I think, pretty easily by knockout. And I'm picking him by knockout. But there is a version of this fight where that does impact him. Where like the pathological aggression, fearlessness, and physicality of Benoit Saint-Denis actually proves to be a problem. Because like that Lontop fight really still sticks in my brain as a Mauricio Hufi, you are not as technically developed as I would like you to be. But hopefully he looks at that fight and also is like, I need to be better. Because since then, he's been performing, quite well. Though, it's really just a really quick knockout of King Green. But that was a fight where I think there was despite the fact that it was really, really short and not really exposing, I do think that there was a fire in him that was not there beforehand. We'll put it that way. Hufi by knockout, but I am not going to be surprised if Benoit Saint-Denis is able to make this a little bit messy. And then, okay, there are two fights on this card that I'm actually going to be pretty negative about, that I do not like, that I do not enjoy, that I do not understand the point of, and this is one of them, and that is Modestas Bukauskas versus Paul Craig. Here's the thing. Does Paul Craig serve a purpose in the UFC's 205 division? Yes, he's a fight IQ test for young, aggressive, hungry, promising fighters. Do not grapple with Paul Craig. That is it. Do not do what Jamal Hill did. Do not do what Nikita Krylov did, which was basically force feed him a submission. Do not do that. Strike with him, beat him up, and get the job done. That's what should happen. Why do we need to put that test in front of Modestas Bukauskas? Bukauskas is 31 years old. He's for one proven that he has some level of fight IQ. And two, I think he's also proven that there is a ceiling for him that is not particularly higher than he is at now. He should be used as a litmus test fighter for those same guys, basically, like kind of after Paul Craig. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Bukauskas. He can strike. He doesn't have to grapple. He's refused grappling exchanges before. He has good power, and Paul Craig gets hit very, very hard. And he's got good takedown defense, or at least very strong hips, because Paul Craig, Paul Craig with a takedown game would actually be an interesting fighter. It's just that we absolutely know he's not got that takedown game. Like, that's not remotely a question at this point. He's a guy who has a 19% takedown accuracy guy. And a lot of that is against Mauricio Shogun Rua. The ghost of Shogun Rua, essentially. Like, I'm looking for here are his multiple takedown fights, all right? Paul Craig, multiple takedown fights. Jimmy Crute, who wants to grapple with people. And by the way, he lost. He got subbed by Jimmy Crute. Apparently, they gave him 2 takedowns against Magomed Ankalaev. I don't remember any takedowns in that fight at all from him, but apparently there were 2. And then after that, you have, like I said, the 4 takedowns against Mauricio Shogun Rua. And 2 against Andre Muniz, who again is a grappler almost exclusively. So that's why I don't like this fight. It's not the use for either of these guys that makes any sense in the UFC. So I don't like it. I'm picking Bukauskas by TKO. Decision, I guess, is not impossible. But Craig tends to get knocked out. So Balaji Oki versus Mason Jones. Oki is the favorite here, plus 110 to plus 120. Jones minus 138 to minus 150. Oh, sorry, I don't think I did the Craig Bukauskas odds. Bukauskas is minus 345 to minus 390. Craig is plus 260 to plus 300. I might throw that into a parlay on Bukauskas, but I don't think a straight bet is an option there. Mason Jones versus Balaji Oki. Like I said, Balaji Oki has a massively high ceiling. Like, this guy has champion level physical abilities, where with the right coaching, the right development, the right mentality, he could easily get ranked, easily be a title contender, maybe even a champion. I know you feel the butt coming. I don't think he's had proper coaching or development. He got to the UFC undercooked, and historically the UFC is not a place where most fighters, there are exceptions to this, but most fighters actually develop significant amounts in their game. And with Oki, I don't think that's happening. Oki's been winning in the UFC, obviously. Like, that's not been a problem. He's 3-1, if you include his Contender Series win. But wins over Michael Aswell and Timothy Kwamba are really kind of problems. Like, those were way more competitive fights than their physicality would indicate. The only thing I can really say for Oki positively off the Aswell fight is that he at least does have the cardio. Like, he does have the cardio to fight a high-paced fight. And I did have misgivings about that beforehand. What I'm getting at here is Oki is a way higher level prospect than Mason Jones. Mason Jones is more or less at his maximum here, mid-card action fighter. But Mason Jones has the frame to actually battle with him. He has a physical gap that is not that of, like, Michael Aswell, for example. He has a aggressive, tough-nosed, durable striking game that fuses into wrestling pretty well. And I am going to take him here by decision, because I think he can eat Oki's best shots, and Oki's footwork can really be exploited by Jones's aggression, both to land shots, because Oki ends up in bad defensive positions on the feet, and also to score takedowns. Oki compromises his stance in a way that should give away free takedowns to anybody who is, willing to, go hard for them. Axel Sola versus Reese McKee. Sola is minus 130 to minus 146. McKee is plus 110 to plus 116. I'm surprised this is so close because Rhys McKee is such a non-UFC level fighter. And I think Sola is. Like, not Oki levels or Kita, who we're going to talk about later, who are like very, very good athletes. Not quite that level, but he has some decently clean technique, and he is a decent physical force. And that generally is a guy I'm going to pick against Rhys McKee. Now, getting deeper into the dive, though, watching the fights, there is the problem Sola tends to give away a lot of early momentum. He tends to be I don't know if it's him being like a Peter Yan, getting his calculations, getting his reads, or something like that, or if it's just kind of like he starts flat. I'm not honestly sure which it is. But he will let McKee get some level of momentum going. And McKee doesn't usually give momentum back. Like McKee's issue in his losses has tended to be people just overwhelming him from the start. I think the Angelosa fight is maybe the best example in the matter, where Angelosa comes out, and Angelosa is a guy like Axel Sola, who is a little bit of a slow starter. And in his case, I don't think it's him getting his reads. I think it is absolutely him just being kind of naturally a slow starter. He starts cold and being like, you know what? I can just bully this dude. I could just beat him down. And by the third round, McKee was winning. But rounds 1 and 2, Losa looks like a world beater. So I have some worries that maybe are unfounded. But Sola is a pretty reasonable striker. He will get dominant positions on the ground and punish you with them. He's opportunistic in that way. Like, when he gets an opportunity, he is absolutely going to take it, absolutely make a statement with it. And I think that's why I got to pick him. Even with the slight misgivings that I worry about him giving McKee early momentum. But like, McKee is just such a not UFC level athlete that it is very, very hard to see picking him in a fight. Like, this is a guy who was out was kind of beaten athletically by Alex Morono. Now, I understand that was 2020, but like, that hasn't gotten better at all. So that's the concern. And the only win he has in the UFC is that Daniel Frunzel one. Daniel Frunzel is not good. I didn't even know why he got signed off of Contender Series, if I'm being entirely honest. So Sola by decision is my pick, because McKee is pretty tough, pretty durable guy. Patricio Pitbull versus Loseni Kita? I'm not sure how to say his name. All right, so Kita gets like the Oki like treatment here, basically. Dude is super fast, super explosive, super quick, super dangerous. It's all on the table. This guy is going to be a very, very, very good fighter. Assuming he doesn't like mentally fold after the first loss, like, who knows? Like, we've had that happen. We've had that happen with guys who, once the downhill starts, the downhill really starts. And I know the response is going to be, well, he's already lost. It's like, he lost to an injury. I mean the first proper like beating he gets. Who knows what would happen with that? But like, he's beaten Ivan Butchinger, who's a solid fighter on the regional scene. He's beaten some solid dudes on the regional scene, and he looks legitimately quick and like he has all the physical attributes you could ask for. Now, is he a great technician? The answer is no. His technical reads defensively are not good. His footwork, again, is not very good. Seems to be the thing that people pick up last. He can be taken down, and his response to getting taken down is, I know I'm in a bad position here. I know you've got like a leg entanglement and a dominant spot, and you're maybe even on my back. I'm just going to stand up and beat you up like that. And he's up against Patricio Pitbull. So he has a chance to win. He is the favorite, in fact, actually. I'm a little surprised by that. Minus 210 to minus 235. Plus 170 to plus 180 on Pitbull. And maybe it's the odds, but I gotta go Pitbull here. Pitbull of a decade ago would beat this guy. He would have the counter ability, and both as a striker and as a wrestler, to take advantage of the shortcomings in Kita's defense and footwork and make that count. He would put the old man on him. He would put the veteran on him. even before he was the old man. And I still have to go with it. This is it's going to be a weird run for Pitbull in the UFC because it's very, very clear that there is not a good idea of how to use him. And also, it's painful to listen to the UFC commentary in regards to him because with the Yair Rodriguez fight, it was like, did you know that there's levels to this game, brother? There's levels to this game, and he's not on this. He's not on. I don't know why I'm doing a Hulk Hogan impression, but it kind of felt like that a little bit. It felt like that's the appropriate energy for that commentary. But it's, it's ignoring that this is a guy that they signed really, really near the end of his career. Probably well past even the post-prime aspect. Well, I shouldn't say that. Past the downfall and into like the proper post-prime of his career. And then you had the Dan Ige fight where it was like Cormier admitting, I've never seen this guy fight and I don't know what he's doing. And that's also very annoying because it's a classic issue with DC. Do your goddamn job. And we're probably going to see more like terrible commentary here. I guess that's my prediction. But the opening for counters for Pitbull are here. There are defensive liabilities in Keats' game as a wrestler and as a striker. Is he going to be dangerous as all heck? Yes. Is he going to at least have one or two very large moments against Pitbull? Yes. But I'm crossing my fingers here. I'm crossing my fingers that it's just not another Bellator embarrassment. And also that I can pick up an underdog win here. William Gomes versus Robert Ruchala. I think that's how you say it. Ruchala, like I said, is the debuting fighters, the one that I have the least ideas for his future, honestly. But he's an exciting fighter. He's very aggressive. He's well-rounded. Pretty decent athlete. Nothing like really, really stands out in terms of like high-end athleticism, in my opinion, but we'll see. And he's up against Gomes, who is like a really, really athletic neutralizer. And I will be picking the 6-foot-tall featherweight, which I still can't get over. That is huge. 6-foot-tall, 145. God damn. It's admittedly a bit of a sadness hedge because like Gomes' fights when he wins are like not very exciting. And he did get beaten by Hyder and Mill. That's the thing. I did rewatch that Hyder and Mill fight, and I'm like, man, there's hope here. But I'm going to go with Gomes by decision here. He is the favorite at minus 250 to minus 265. Ruchala plus 195 to plus 210. Maybe that's worth a bet. And then, all right, unlike with Paul Craig. Unlike with Paul Craig versus Modestas Bukauskas, I freely admit that this fight makes sense from a booking standpoint. And I'm talking about Omar Sy versus Brinson Ribeiro, where Omar Sy is a minus 450 to minus 520 favorite to plus 333 to plus 375 on Ribeiro. Because Sy is, while 29 years old, a pretty raw developing talent who has obvious potential. This would have been actually, call me crazy, this might actually have been a good use for Paul Craig. And I get it, but it's not an interesting fight really in any way. Like if this ends up being interesting, it's a really bad sign. Ribeiro is not good. He's been better than I expected to be in the UFC in the sense that number one, he's actually won some fights, but number two, that there does seem to be like some technical development going on. But he is a guy who I think is very reliant on being a big physical fighter, 6'3", 81-inch reach, quick, explosive, and not a lot of actual technical talent. Like the most technical thing he did was, I guess, show some footwork against Kyle Machado, which was more about Machado being very, very slow-paced. Slow-footed, I should say. And that Komori hit on, I'm blanking on his name right this second, Central Asian, former Soviet Union guy. I don't know why I'm walking you through this like you can help me out here. DR Nergozai. There you go. But Nergozai had that really bad fight with Uran Saltabaldiev, which has really kind of ruined that win for him. But, yeah. I mean, C should be able to take him down because his takedown defense is bad. Should be able to find his range because it's not like his footwork is super good. He's just reasonably quick on his feet, and C is a monster. 6'4", 83-inch reach. This dude is massive. Like, he has all the physical talent in the world. But he's also just kind of dull. I'll pick him by submission just because Ribeiro does give up like submissions when he gets frustrated, and I imagine he will get frustrated here and get finished. Marcin Tybura versus Antidelia. Tybura is the favorite at -105 to minus. Oh, no, never mind. This is a double minus fight. There's no real favorite. It's basically even money. -105 to -111 on Tybura, -114 to -120 on DeLagia. So DeLagia is the favorite in technicality. We've seen DeLagia get out wrestled. We've seen him lose. This is heavyweight, but in theory, he is better at everything than Tybura. He is a better striker. He is a harder hitter. He is durable. He is tough. He is hard to take down. He is a pretty decent wrestler. He's a very brutal ground and pounder, and I will be taking him by decision just because Tybura is super tough for the most part. So Tybura's toughness is got to be like one of the weirdest things, because if you look back through his UFC run, even you're gonna get to, or like even beforehand, you're gonna get to like getting knocked out by Augusto Sakai, which is weird because Sakai's not that powerful. And otherwise, and Tom Aspinall, but otherwise, it's he's been really, really durable for his career. So I'm gonna say the PFL heavyweight takes the win here, but it's gonna go the distance. Then we have a late notice replacement fight: Cowie Fernandez versus Harry Hardwick. I want to pick Hardwick, I really do, because I don't really like Fernandez. There's something about him, and I can't put my finger on it, that I do not really like. But he's a Nova Now fighter. He's well schooled. He has jiu-jitsu. He has kickboxing. He'll be the bigger guy here because he is native to the 155 division. Hardwick is coming up for 145. Although Hardwick will be taller, interesting enough. So it's not going to be a huge size advantage, but I do think he'll have a little bit, and he'll have a physical advantage as a better athlete and a guy who has the full camp here. So I've talked about Fernandez. Let's talk about Hardwick. Hardwick is a Cage Warriors champion. Cage Warriors has been a great processing ground. If you don't watch Cage Warriors fight, you should really go and do that. The quality of that fight, those fighters there for a regional promotion, is incredibly good. And frankly, the UFC should be trying to raid their champions way more often. He's well-rounded. He has a good opportunistic grappling game. He is a talented striker. He is not a wow factor from a physical standpoint, but solid, fine. But Fernandez probably going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit more prepared, a little bit more physical, and I have him by decision. But looking forward to this fight. Like I said, looking forward to like every single debutante on this card. They're all very, very good. And it's kind of weird because I'm picking against most of them. Like, I'm picking against Hardwick here. I'm picking against Ruchala. I'm picking against Kita. I'm only picking Sola and Jalajah. But I do think that there's a very bright future for like everybody involved in the debutante pool here. Sam Patterson versus Trey Waters. Patterson's -175 to -194. Waters is +140 to +150. The big question here is you've got a 6'3" guy who's got a 78-inch reach against a 6'5" guy with a 77-inch reach. And which one of them is going to figure out that they're not like massively taller than their opponent for the first time ever in their career, probably? Well, no, Patterson was of a similar height to Danny Barlow. But Danny Barlow is weird. Danny Barlow doesn't like weaponize his range at all. He just wants to land his big left hook, and that's really all his game is, and I really need that to change. But I'm going with Waters here. Now, the reason I'm going with Waters here is I think just honestly durability and putting the game together. Patterson seems to be a very kill or be killed fighter. He either finishes you or gets finished. Seems to be his deal. And Waters is fairly durable and like did get stopped obviously by Gabriel Bonfim, but I think we've established by now that Gabriel Bonfim is actually like a really good fighter, like a really dangerous fighter. So I'm just going to go with Waters to be the probably more technically sound striker, both defensively and offensively, and to get the job done because Patterson is kind of chinny I think he could be hurt reasonably easily. So there you go. And then here's the other fight that I absolutely despise. Brad Tavares at minus 210 to minus 235. Robert Brychek plus 175 to plus 190. It's Tavares here because Brychek is just like a big power hook merchant, and that's like all he's got to him. He was a European signing that I think was actually just kind of garbage, and I don't think I'm going to pick him against anybody, honestly. That being said, Tavares is 37 years old. He's looked problematic. He's never been dangerous, and his durability is fading. So I don't know. If Brychek folds him with his power, I'll be sad, but I won't be surprised. Renat Fakhretdinov versus Andreas Gustafsson is like way too early on this card. It's about an even money fight. Gustafsson is the minus 115 to minus 125 favorite, minus 106 to plus 105 on Fakhretdinov. I feel like I need to go with Gustafsson here. Fakhretdinov tends to fade. He does. He has a style that I would traditionally pick against Gustafsson because Gustafsson is a clinch wrestler predominantly. Fakhretdinov is a more comprehensive shot wrestler in the sense that he uses shots to get into range and can complete takedowns off of them, but he often ends up clinch wrestling and chain wrestling with his opponents. And like Gustafsson is very good at that. Now there is the legitimate question here, the Dagestani question as it were. Fakhretdinov is probably the best wrestler that Gustafsson has ever faced. What happens if Gustafsson just instantly gets taken down? And the answer is probably not good things. But Fakhretdinov is not very dangerous, not very lethal, and I see him getting stuck in a lot of clinch exchanges, a lot of chain wrestling exchanges, and Gustafsson's cardio just basically prevailing with him and being more active on the feet. So there you go. I'll go with Gustafsson by decision, but this is a very close one. And the betting odds suggest that. It's kind of weird. It's a very close one that could also be very, very not close and not close for the underdog. Like Fakhretdinov could come in and just be like, did I tell you, do I need to remind you guys that I am Russian? He's not Dagestani. Right. Well, I don't know if he's not, but he's from Moscow, Russia. So I shouldn't use the Dagestani comparisons. And then Shauna Bannon versus Sam Hughes. Bannon is the plus 250 to plus 275 underdog. Hughes is minus 333 to minus 360. I'm not picking Bannon against anybody. That is, I think, an actual UFC fighter. Yes, she has 2 wins, but it's against Elise Ardalan and Pooja Tomar. They are not UFC fighters. They're just in the UFC because the UFC has got a lot of filler. The Elise Reed fight again for Sam Hughes, where she's facing somebody who's the best part of her game is like sidekicks and like some creative striking stuff. And Bannon will do something very technically cool at some point in the fight. She always does. But she's not athletic enough. She's not dangerous enough. She's not even really a high pace enough fighter to really win. I see Hughes being able to eat her shots, getting close, put on the wrestle boxing game, get her to the ground, and overwhelm him to a TKO at probably some point, honestly. First round might be interesting. Hughes tends to start a little bit slow. I don't know. That's about the biggest thing I can give you. Anyways, check out down below for my Discord, my social medias, my gaming stuff, and enjoy.